Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to the session of Textual Study of the Quran. Today we'll be starting off with verse 161 of Surah Araf, which is the 7th Surah of the Quran and the 2nd Surah of chapter number 2, which is the chapter that we are studying. So you would recall that we have discussed that the Quran is arranged in 7 chapters, and the first chapter has ended on Surah Maida, the 5th Surah, and it had one Meccan Surah, which is Surah Fatiha, and 4 Medinan Surahs, which of course are Baqarah, Al Imran, Nisa, and Maida. In chapter number 2, we have 2 Meccan Surahs and 2 Medinan Surahs. So the first 2 of them, which is Aram and Araf, are Meccan, and Medinan Surahs are Anfal and Tawbah. So this is a Meccan Surah, and it addresses the Quraysh. It tells them that as far as they are concerned, if they follow the footsteps of the previous nations, which were destroyed by various calamities, they will also meet a similar fate. Perhaps the only difference is that they met their fate, the earlier nations met their fate through these natural disasters, and the Quraysh will meet their fate at the hands of the disbelievers, at the hands of the believers. So we start off, it says, وَإِذْ قِيلَ لَهُمُ اسْكُنُوا هَذِهِ الْقَرْيَةَ وَكُلُوا مِنْهَا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمْ وَقُولُوا حِطَّةٌ وَادْخُلُوا الْبَابَ سُجَّدًا نَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ خَطِيئَاتِكُمْ سَنَزِيدُ الْمُحْسِنِينَ فبدل الذين ظلموا منهم قولا غير الذي قيل لهم فأرسلنا عليهم رجزا من السماء بما كانوا يظلمون. And make them recall that incident when they were told, dwell in this city and eat in it whatever you are, and pray to God, Lord, forgive our sins, and enter the gate of the settlement while bowing down your heads in humility. We shall forgive your sins, and those of you who will adopt a good attitude, we shall bless them with even more favors in future. Then the unjust changed what was said to them by other words. Thus we sent down a torment on them from the heavens, because they had remained unjust to themselves. So the word Al-Qarya, this is something that we have to understand, that it is evident from its usage that just as it is used for small villages or settlements or towns, it is also used for large cities. And here it refers to some city of Palestine, because we know from other instances or parallel verses in the Quran, especially in Surah Baqarah, that it is only meant for such a land. So the Bani Israel, of course, they were asked that they should enter the land of Palestine, the land of Canaan, the land which the Almighty had promised them. And this was the promised land. Of course, the dimensions of this land have been explained in the Torah in detail. And this is the land where they were made to possess. They were asked to occupy this land, make it into a center of monotheism. And from here they should launch the dawah or the preaching mission of Tawheed to other nations of the world. However, we know that this never happened. They did not enter the city in the time of Moses. We know that. And Moses had passed away when they did enter, and this was done in the leadership of his most trusted disciple, Joshua or Yusha. And then, of course, they dwelled there, and when they entered the city, then they had a lot of I would say backlog along with them. They started to complain, they started to copy the ways of the evil nations, especially the polytheistic nations. And then, of course, there is a whole story of what has happened and has continued to happen ever since then. And we will be seeing that as we go along. So this is once again something that they did. And of course, when the words are said to them that they can eat from wherever they want, it's something that they can freely consume. This is like God's blessing on them. And when they were called to this city, to enter the city, they had also been asked to say Kulu Hitta. And the word Hitta, as we all know, says Mas'alatuna Hitta. It's like a complete sentence, and it is a substitute of a complete sentence, and it means to brush away sins. The word Hitta means. So because Arabic and Hebrew have similar origins, so one can deduce analogously that in Hebrew also it would have meant brushing away and forgiving sins. So they were asked to enter the gate, and وَادْخُلُوا الْبَابَ سُجَّدًا. They were asked to enter the gate by bowing down, by it's not by, of course, prostration here. The fact is that it is something that is meant to make them realize that they must bow their heads. The word sujada does not mean they are to prostrate their heads, because of course in this position they can never enter the city. It was as if they should bend their heads and enter the city in humility. So this is what they were meant to do. So as I just explained, that there are people who might think that the word sujjada only means to prostrate, but in the Arabic language it has even bowing down, courtesying, doing a small bending of the head to acknowledge something. That's also the meaning of this word, and it is in contrast to its meaning of placing one's forehead on the ground. So that's not always implied. So what is then said is that the unjust among them, they changed to what was said to them. So they were required to say the word hitta, which means that forgive us. That there were other people amongst those Israelites who they replaced this word. They replaced the word hitta, which meant God forgive us, by one which had an entirely different meaning. And that is why it is said, فَبَدَّلَ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا قَوْلًا غَيْرَ الَّذِي قِيلَ لَهُمْ. So they just changed it to another word. And what happened as a result? God says that then we sent down a torment on them from the heavens. So this is a punishment and has been called a torment from the heavens in the same manner as we call a great calamity as a heavenly punishment. And most probably the Israelites faced this punishment in Shatim, a city of Palestine, because we have a parallel happening that is being reported in the Bible. And the Bible says that the Israelites were actually guilty of sexual misconduct with the Moabite women. And they furthermore got involved in certain polytheistic sacrifices and offerings and became indirectly incriminated with worshipping their deity, who was Baal. The Baal deity whom these Moabites or the people who lived there, they worship. So they also became incriminated with this. And when this happened, in retribution to these crimes, the Almighty sent down upon them an epidemic, I would say, which killed 24,000 of their men and women, as has been reported in the Torah. So remember, this is another thing that happened, that when they entered and they became involved in polytheistic practices, and they had illegal marital affairs, or out of wedlock marital affairs with the Moabite women, then they were punished for this, especially when they became indirectly involved in worshipping their deity, who's called Baal. And after this Baal, we know that the city Baal Bakka is also used. So this is the situation that we have to understand, that the Israelites continue to defy God. They continue to do things which were in contradistinction to what they were asked to do. وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عَنِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كَانَتْ حَاضِرَةَ الْبَحْرِ إِذْ يَعْدُونَ فِي السَّبْتِ إِذْ تَأْتِيهِمْ حِيتَانُهُمْ يوم سبتهم شرعا ويوم لا يسبتون لا تأتيهم كذلك نبلوهم بما كانوا يفسقون. And ask them about the circumstances of that settlement also, which was near the sea shore, when they would transgress the bounds of God regarding the Sabbath, when their fish would come before them on their Sabbath with heads raised above the water, and would not come on other days. In this way we used to test them, because they would be disobedient. So first of all, as you can see, the words are very descriptive, and they say, وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عَنِ الْقَرْيَةِ, that ask them about the circumstances of that settlement, or that city. Now, when this style of verse, or this style of construction is used, the implication is that in spite of their mischief and misdeeds, they did not desist from their arrogant claims of piety and regarded themselves to be the favored ones of God. And if this is the case, then they should be asked of the city that violated the sanctity of the Sabbath, and as a result God made them an exemplary lesson. So they are being said that, well, why don't you learn this lesson, that what happened in that city, when these people who lived in that city, they were called not to hunt fish on the Sabbath, but yes, they did exactly that. They made a certain subterfuge, and they created a subterfuge, in fact, and so that they could hunt those fish in a certain way in other days, and they would, in fact, in this way try to observe the Sabbath and at the same time mock it, so like making fun of it. So this settlement, of course, we know that it's a place that was near the seashore. And if we look at the parallel verses in the Torah, most probably this settlement or the city was Ilah, or it's also called Ilut. Ilat and Ilut, these are two or three pronunciations. And you might be surprised to know that there is a port in Israel even today by this name. And the famous seaport of Jordan, which is also called Aqaba, that also is a place that lies near it. And in the times of the Prophet Solomon, this was the principal port for his military and trade fleets for the Red Sea. So when he would travel to the Red Sea, this was the port, the port of Aqaba. And of course, this port was very near the port of Aqaba. The port was Eilat itself, and whenever he would go for these military route for any militant action or for some trade purposes into the Red Sea, this port would be used. And it's looked like, I mean, if you look at the old mosque of the world, or the map of the world, the way it has been presented, you will see that its location lies at the extreme end of the branch of the Red Sea, which lies in the form of a long gulf between the eastern side of the island of Sinai and the west coast of Arabia. So I don't have the services of a map here, but you will easily trace it. You can easily trace it. So what did they do when they would transgress the bounds of God regarding the Sabbath? So the word Sabbath actually means a holiday. It means it's a Hebrew word for holiday. It was originally on Friday, but the Israelites changed it to the following day, which was a Saturday. So for the Israelites, that day was devoted to worshipping the Almighty generation after generation as a symbolic manifestation of the eternal covenant that they had pledged. So just as Muslims today have this holy day of Friday, in a very similar way, the Jews were also required to dedicate themselves on Friday, do no work but worship God on that day, and it was a holiday for this purpose. And this is something that they were to observe, and they did observe generation after generation. And as I said, it was a Friday, but they changed it to Saturday, and that's how Saturday also came to be known as Sabbath. So on that day, as I said, they were not allowed to do work, go out for hunting or entertainment, and they could not even light their stoves, as the Torah says, and even not take the services of their slaves. They had to totally and entirely dedicate themselves for the worship of God. And then it is said that in this way, we used to test them because they would be disobedient. Now, the words of the verse that mention that the fish would come out of the water with heads raised up, if you can see once again, it says, إِسْتَأْتِيهِمْ حِيتَانُهُمْ يَوْمَ سَبْتِهِمْ شُرَّعًا وَيَوْمَ لَا يَسْبِتُونَ لَا تَأْتِيهِمْ, which means that before them when the fish would come before them on their Sabbath with heads raised above the water so that they could hunt them. It was like a bait thrown to them, and they would not come on other days. So what was actually happening here? So first of all, the word Shura is the plural of Sharia, and when this word appears, I mean, normally this word is used for spears. If you look at a spear, it's like a Sharia. So it means that something which is carried vertically in this way, and that, of course, it is used for fish. That is why, because when fish, they come near the surface of the water, so a small fin, it protrudes, and that is how we get to know that fish are coming near the seashore. So it meant that fish that have raised their heads, they were coming near, and if a person stands on the side of a pond containing fish that have been reared, he will see this very, very majestic view at that time when they appear, that fish will be seen with their heads raised above the water as if carrying vertical spears. So that is why they are called Shura. So at seaside places of hunting, this view I'm sure would have been very fantastic and enchanting. And in the Sharia of the Jews, they were prohibited to work or hunt on the Sabbath, which is, of course, it was a Friday, but they changed it to Saturday. But they could not contain themselves. So, as I said, they invented various excuses and subterfuges to catch the fish on Saturday. And what would they do? So they would actually make canals in which those fish would get caught, and when they would come on Saturday or on the holiday, and then on other days the fish that would get caught in those canals, they would be hunted. So now we know from the Quran that it is the practice of God that when a nation becomes adamant, it becomes adamant on disobedience and does not desist, even after the good people among them try to stop it, then we know from God that the trials of such a nation, they toughen, and a more degree of toughness is added to it. And this happens by it reaching the extent of utter defiance and becoming worthy of punishment. So God created a situation for the Israelites. On weekdays, these fish would not be seen, or if ever they would be seen, there would be very few of them. But on Sabbath, the day they were prohibited to fish or to hunt, they would appear in arrays and in processions, and this would incite the greed of the Israelites even more. Now, it is well known that if a person begins to want more the thing that are forbidden, the more you forbid something, the more he wants them. And the Israelites, because of their own evil ways and misdemeanor, they became entangled in this double trial, and then went so far in it that they did not receive warning of even God's torment, let alone the advice and counsel of the pious. And that is why God's curse ultimately inflicted them. Okay. وَإِذْ قَالَتْ أُمَّةٌ مِّنْهُمْ لِمَ تَعِظُونَ قَوْمٌ اللَّهُ مُهْلِكُهُمْ أَوْ مُعَذِّبُهُمْ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا قَالُوا مَعْذِرَةً إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. And make them recall when one of their groups said to those who were counseling, "Why do you counsel people whom God is going to destroy or sternly punish?" Why? They replied, "To present our excuse before our Lord, and so that they can be secure from God's punishment." So you see, when they were counseled and they were told that, why are you counseling such people? Why are you counseling such people who deserve to just go to the gallows, so to speak, or they have no punishment? I mean, they have no excuse before their Lord. So they would reply, "Ma'ziratan ila rabbikum," so that we can have an excuse before God, and so that they can become secure from God's punishment if they really want to. So the real purpose of preaching and the final responsibility for all those who undertake this task is that they should adhere to it until the last breath of life and never cease their efforts of preaching. So they should not lose hope or become disappointed and dejected that since people are not listening, so I'm just going to abstain from what I'm doing, or I'm going to abstain from preaching. This is what God does not want us to do. He wants us to continue, because in this way we would be doing what best is required of us. And after the termination of the institution of prophethood, no phase can come when a preacher can assume or he can, say that, well, he has done his responsibility and therefore now he leaves his nation to wrath or to the wrath of God. That is something that could have only be done in the times of the prophets of God, because they are the ones who communicate the truth in its ultimate form. Human beings like us, we just cannot. And that is why the efforts to reform people should continue, and that is why this is something of a responsibility. فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ أَنْجَيْنَا الَّذِينَ يَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ السُّوءِ وَأَخَذْنَا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا بِعَذَابٍ بَئِيسٍ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْسُقُونَ. Then, when they forgot everything through which they were reminded of, we delivered those who were forbidding from evil and those who had been unjust to themselves. We seized them in a stern punishment because they had become defiant. Now, we seized them in a stern punishment because they became defiant. The punishment that was given to these Israelites is exactly in consonance with the law that had been prescribed for them with respect to their position of witnesses of God's religion on earth. It has no bearing on other nations of the world. So remember, فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ, this does not relate to common punishments, it relates to the punishment. And that is exactly something that was prescribed for the Israelites if they would go astray. And what was that? As you can see from the very next verse, فَلَمَّا عَتَوْا مَا نُهُوا عَنْهُ قُلْنَا لَهُمْ كُونُوا قِرَدَةً خَاسِئِينَ. Thus when with rebelliousness they continued to do precisely that from which they had been forbidden, we said to them, "Go, turn into despicable monkeys." So this was the punishment that was given to them, that go and turn into despicable monkeys. And if you look at the sentence with a little more deliberation, you'll see that it is like a curse. It is evident from its consequences that are stated, if you look at Surah Baqarah earlier on in verse 66, that their resemblance to monkeys was so manifest that the people of the surrounding cities learned a lesson from them. And it does seem that when, like monkeys, they broke all limits in following their base desires, first their character, their conduct became perverted, and later their appearance also changed. So they started to resemble monkeys. And after this, only a small distinction remained between their inner and outer selves, which later vanished too. And ultimately, they became accursed monkeys from both inside and their outside. This is the punishment that was inflicted upon them. And also, we know that when God says that He inflicts such cruel punishments, then we have to understand that the Israelites had been informed of this verdict since the very beginning, and we will see this as we go along. So, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُونَهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَسَرِيعُ الْعِقَابِ وَإِنَّهُ لَغَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Also, make them recall with when your Lord informed them of this verdict of his, that until the day of judgment he will definitely keep raising against them people who will inflict them with extremely cruel punishments. In reality, your Lord is very swift in retribution also, and certainly is forgiving and very merciful. So the Israelites had been informed of this verdict, as I said earlier on, from the very beginning. And it is mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Leviticus in the Bible that after the prophets, if after this the prophets would come and keep on reminding of this promise, and the scriptures of Isaiah and Jeremiah and of all other prophets, they mentioned this warning. And finally, when Jesus came, he proclaimed it in the streets of Jerusalem. And how was this verdict implemented? We know from history that this verdict was implemented, and the adoption of residents in an invitation to a storm. After this, all their assembled might will be routed. This is something that was done, as we can see from the parallel verses in the book of Leviticus. And as this verse tells us, that your Lord is very swift in retribution also, and is at the same time forgiving and very merciful. So these two things are mentioned in parallel, in tandem. So after the truth has been conclusively communicated, God does not delay the punishment, and if people mend their ways, he immediately forgives them. So this is because he's not merely swift in retribution, he is also someone who is very forgiving and merciful. He's not fond of punishing people. It's not his way. It's only a byproduct of being defiant and arrogant, and deliberately some people who take to denying the truth. وَقَطَّعْنَاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أُمَمًا مِّنْهُمْ الصَّالِحُونَ وَمِنْهُمْ دُونَ ذَلِكَ وَبَلَوْنَاهُمْ بِالْحَسَنَاتِ وَالسَّيِّئَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. We scattered the community in the land in the form of various groups. Among them, some are pious and some otherwise also. We tested them through good and bad circumstances so that they may take heed. Now, of course, there were some pious amongst them as well, as it is said that among them some are pious and some are otherwise. Now, the implication is that in individual capacities, all types of good and bad people are present among them, but at the collective level, they have become deprived of all those traits that could make them rise among the comity of other nations. So, yes, individually there could be people who are pious, who are well-mannered, who are God-conscious, but at the national, the collective level, the vast majority of them were the ones who were deprived of all these traits. فَخَلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ وَرِثُوا يَأْخُذُونَ عَرَضَ هَذَا الْأَدْنَى وَيَقُولُونَ سَيُغْفَرُ لَنَا وَإِنْ يَأْتِيهِمْ عَرَضٌ مِثْلُهُ يَأْخُذُوهُ أَلَمْ يُؤْخَذْ عَلَيْهِمْ مِيثَاقُ الْكِتَابِ أَنْ لَا يَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْحَقَّ وَدَرَسُوا مَا فِيهِ وَالدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Now, as you can see, that once again they have been told that the fact is that the messengers of God have done their best. And if you look at the translation of this verse, you will see that that is the case. And it is said, and after the earlier generations, such unworthy people became inheritors of the book of God, who reap benefits of this lowly world in exchange for its verses, and say, we shall be forgiven everything. We shall be forgiven everything. And if they are given that lowly provision once again, they will accept it as well. Was not a promise taken from them about this very book, that they will say nothing but the truth about God? They would say nothing but the truth about God. And have they even thoroughly read whatever has been written in this book? In reality, the abode of the hereafter is better for those who fear God. They do not understand. So the word darasu, it actually means to rub something. The word darasa, it means to rub something. But here it is used for the Jews, that while reading the book, they have made it dim and faint. But even after reading it so many times, they could not grasp its message. Remember, the Jews They were given the book, the Torah. It's a book that was a harbinger to the Quran. It predicted the arrival of a final prophet. It predicted the arrival of a book with the prophet. And they read this book again and again. And the Quran says, Darasu, that they read those lines of the Torah with their finger on the lines so much that it made those lines dim and faint with their reading. I mean, they thoroughly read the book. That is what is implied here. But still, they, as the Quran says, they did not get the message of God, and hence they were punished for this, or would be punished as well. وَالدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ. The fact is that the abode of the hereafter is better for those who fear God. لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do you not understand? وَالَّذِينَ يُمَسِّكُونَ بِالْكِتَابِ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ إِنَّا لَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُصْلِحِينَ. Indeed, those who strongly hold on to the book of God and are diligent in the prayer are the ones who are reformers, and we will not waste the reward. We will not waste the reward of the reformers. So you see, what is being said here is that those who strongly hold on to the book of God and are diligent in the prayer are the ones who are reformers. This is a message that you'll find being spread in the Quran on so many occasions, that if you hold steadfast to the book is going to take you and it's going to guide you to what righteousness is, to what the truth is. And if you forsake the book, then that very book which was meant to guide and lead you to the right destination is going to lead you astray because of your slackness, and because of the fact that we are not dependent on the book for itself. And the fact which is mentioned right after that, yumassikuna bil kitab, is aqamus salah. That is another important responsibility, that they must be diligent in the prayer. The prayer is the foremost practical directive of Islam, and it has been one that has remained in this foundational capacity since Adam. From Adam to Muhammad, peace be upon them, it is the prayer that expresses our gratitude to God. It is the prayer that expresses humility before God. It recognizes God. We pray in order to acknowledge the Almighty, and it expresses the fact that after entering in the folds of Islam, it's not just through our tongue that we profess this humility. It is through our deeds as well, and the foremost deed of worship is the prayer, and that is something that we can see that is why it's mentioned so rampant in the Quran. And then the Quran says, "Inna la nudhi'u ajral muslihin," that God is not going to waste the reward of such reformers. وَإِذْ نَتَقْنَا الْجَبَلَ فَوْقَهُمْ كَأَنَّهُ ظُلَّ وَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُ وَاقِعٌ بِهِمْ خُذُوا مَا آتَيْنَاكُمْ بِقُوَّةٍ وَاذْكُرُوا مَا فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Do they even remember when we had lifted the mountain and suspended above them as if it were a canopy, and they were thinking that it is about to fall upon them? God said, hold fast to whatever we have bestowed on you, and remember whatever is written in it, so that you remain secure from God's wrath. So they were thinking that the mountain was raised above them, made to rise above them, and they were thinking that it was about to fall upon them. Now, this is a manifestation of God's power and majesty. Its purpose at that time was to make the Israelites realize that they must always keep in mind the great extent of the power of God, with whom they were making the covenant. And if they broke this covenant, they should well imagine how He would deal with them. So this is something that is also mentioned in the book of Exodus in the Torah. So if you look at this excerpt, it says, "Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently." So you can clearly see that what has been said here is also what has been said by the Bible and by the Torah itself. So we bestowed upon them, remember what is written in it. Of course, the implication is that they have to realize that if they want to prosper, then خُذُوا مَا آتَيْنَاكُمْ بِقُوَّةٍ وَاذْكُرُوا مَا فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That if they would like to prosper, then they should remember that they must hold steadfast to what is said in it, which is, of course, the directives of God. And we have bestowed on you, and remember whatever is written in it, so that you remain secure from God's wrath. So if you follow the book of God, if you follow this book that was given to them on Mount Sinai, then God is going to make you rise amongst the comity of nations, and you will be the beloved nation of God. You were chosen for a task, and if you complete this task, then of course that is something that is a responsibility that you have to fulfill. So with this we come to an end to today's lesson regarding Surah Araf. These are the 10 verses, verse 161 and 171. Inshallah, in our next sessions, we'll start off with verse 172 and hope to finish the surah before the advent of Ramadan. And now you have time for any questions.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. I have a question. So, first, actually, I'll let Imran go. Imran, why don't you go and ask your question first, and I'll ask it later.
No, please go ahead. You have your questions. So I'll just wait. No worries.
So, Dr. Saleem, when the Israelites were waiting outside Palestine to enter, so the sequence is just a quick recap. I'm just trying to understand it. So, Hazrat Yusuf, the Palestinians moved to Egypt. Then they were expelled when Moses returned back with them. Then Moses went to the mountain. They defied.
No, they were not expelled. Actually, they came out with Moses, and the Pharaoh actually, when he was shown various miracles, he allowed the Israelites to go with Moses. And Moses took them, the Pharaoh pursued them, and he was drowned in the Red Sea. So they were able to come out from there, and then they pursued their whole course. They wanted to enter the land of Palestine, but this never happened because of certain deeds of theirs. The Quran says that they were made to wander in the desert for 40 years. During this time, Moses died. And if you look at the book of Deuteronomy, right at the end, we find that Moses gave this responsibility to his trusted lieutenant and disciple, Joshua. So it was in his leadership that they ultimately entered the kingdom of Palestine. And when they entered there, then there many things happened. One of them was that they became involved with illegal and lustful affairs with the Moabite women, and they also began to worship the Baal, which was their deity. And for this, God says, we sent down calamity upon them from the sky, and this is something that then continued to happen in other ways as well.
Right. So the what you mentioned, Zalil Bandar Banjao, that is the translation. This is what happened at this particular point in time.
So this is what happened when they were asked to dedicate themselves at Sabbath at that place in that city, and when they did not follow the directive of God, so this is how they were punished. Remember, they were punished, and so this is not all of the Israelites who were there. So the people who were at the shore of that city were the ones who were punished.
So this is 40 years after they left Egypt, basically. So it was the descendants.
It was during that time. It was during that time. In those 40 years.
40 years after. It was during the time.
No. They were made because of the fact that they were asked to enter the city of Palestine. They refused, and they said that inna fiha qauman jabbarin, that they are tall and very, very strong people who live there, and we will not enter there. So because of their refusal to enter, they were made to wander in the desert of Sinai for 40 more years. During this time, Moses died. And then after his death, it was Joshua, his disciple, because Moses came to know that he would not be able to make them enter in his own time. So he transferred the reins of leadership to his disciple Joshua. And then once Moses had passed away, after him, Joshua was the person who was able to lead them into Palestine or Canaan.
So these are the descendants of the people who left Egypt for the most part.
Yes, one whole generation died during that time.
Okay. Imran, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Thank you.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Thank you very much for a beautiful translation. So one of the things I wanted to start with, the city that Joshua entered, where they said that they killed everyone, and they including the animals and the kids, and is that the one, the Jericho? Is that the one he entered, or is it a different one where in Bible?
No. You see, if you're talking about the initial time when the Israelites, they were asked. In fact, Moses asked them, and he said that you should enter the land of Palestine. And in reply, the whole nation sat down, and it said, "Fazhab anta wa rabbuka faqatila." You and your Lord go and fight with them. We are not going. So we know that there were just two exceptions: Joshua and Caleb, two of his lieutenants who went there to survey. They were the party of people who was sent inside to make a survey of the people who were inside. So they came back, and they said that they are huge people. They are as tall as tree trunks, and if we enter there, they'll just bulldoze us. So it's not a place to go. And Joshua and Caleb were the only two exceptions, and they said that, well, if this is the will of God, and if this is what you say, Moses, then we are ready. So that is when this punishment was pronounced upon them, that for 40 years they'll not be able to enter that land until this whole generation dies, which has been responsible for not entering, which has actually refused to enter. So once they passed away, then they were able to enter in the leadership of Joshua. Whether the town was Jericho or some other town, that's another discussion that we will be doing later on.
I see.
Because that is mentioned.
Yeah, so thank you. But you also mentioned that they changed the word hitta to something else.
Right.
And so is that in Bible? Because I didn't hear it. Maybe you did mention it, so my apologies. I don't know.
So no, we don't find it to the best of my remembrance in the Bible, but the Quran says that when they were asked to enter that city, they were asked to say mas'alatuna hitta, that God brush away our sins. So instead of entering with humility, bowing down their heads and asking for forgiveness, the Quran says فَبَدَّلَ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا غَيْرَ الَّذِي قِيلَ لَهُم. So they changed this word to exactly its opposite. What they were told, they did not say that word, and they substituted that word for another word. But what word that was, we can only imagine that it must have been something that is opposite to this this expression of humility, that God forgive us, something to that effect. It would have been something that expresses their own arrogance, or maybe something that in the sense that, well, this is our right. If we are entering here, we are mighty and we are strong. It would have been surely an expression of their own haughtiness and rebelliousness, which is a hallmark of these Israelites at that time.
Thank you very much, Jazakumullah.
Shabnam, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Sir, ये आपने बताया कि this is Meccan Surah. तो सर इसमें ये जो स्टोरीज नरेशंस हैं ये ज्यादा बनी इसराइल की हम पढ़ रहे हैं. सर, what was the significance कि वो पेगन्स ऑफ मैका ही उस वक्त तो एड्रेसेस थे, तो वर्दे मतलब इसमें क्या सिग्निफिकेंस थी उनके लिए कि वर्दे somewhat aware of these things. तो दूसरा क्वेश्चन है, साथ ही कर लो या बाद में आप ये बता दें.
I think one by one. You see, this is a sequence of the accounts of various prophets of God that has been mentioned. We know Noah was mentioned, Lot was mentioned, the Ad, the Samud, they were mentioned. And then finally we have the tale of Moses, the account of Moses in more detail. Yes, these people knew them very well, because as we know from the Quran, that the most similarity which Prophet Muhammad had, if he had with any prophet, it was with Moses. Inna arsalna ilaykum rasula kama arsalna ila fir'auna rasula. The Quran says in Surah Muzammil that, O Quraysh, we have sent to you this messenger just as we sent Moses as a messenger to Pharaoh. So this shows how they were, they stood in parallel. So their story, their account was very well known to them. And that is why the account of Israelites or Moses is repeated in the Quran. And I can tell you that of all the prophets, he is the most mentioned in the Quran, and the story of the Bani Israel is the most recounted in the Quran.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And sir, second question, sir, how do we know कि sir ये आप ग़ालिबन Bible में होगा कि they were given Friday for worshipping, and then why, sir, why did they change it to Saturday just out of mischief? And God allowed
just
them?
Out of not following their own insolence. You see, it was their own insolence that they wanted to change it to their own convenience. We don't know the exact reason that why. I mean, the reason, of course, was to defy God. But why did they change it to Saturday and not to Thursday? That's something, at the moment I don't recall having been mentioned there in Talmud or maybe in the other sources. But yes, this was a change that they made.
And we know this from Bible only.
Oh yes, we know that very clearly. We know that very clearly that this is something that they did. But we know from the Quran that the holy day has always been a Friday. And that is, yes.
And sir, God allowed them to the prophet of that time?
You see, they were allowed to do so in insolence. It's not that they were always listening to the prophet. So the prophets of their own times must have admonished them, but they continue with their insolence.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Ijaz Hussain Saab, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, as you said that the people, Israelis living in those particular city or town, they were transitioned into monkeys or apes. So that means they were no longer human beings. So just a sort of a silly question. So is it the case that somehow Darwin concluded that monkeys, they are somehow closer to human beings? So is it I mean, is the story linked with Darwin concluded, or it has
No,
nothing
that
to do with
has
that?
actually that is not nothing to do with that, because you see, that's like telling them that their inner and outer portion started to resemble the monkey. So that doesn't mean that their DNA maybe their structure changed or their brain changed. It was the resemblance that is being talked about. The resemblance, your inner resemblance and your outer resemblance. When you say inner resemblance, it means your nature. So it's not your structure that was changed. They had the same structure, but their faces started to resemble monkeys, and their inner nature started to resemble monkeys. As far as their own structure is concerned, that is not being discussed here. For the Darwinian theory of evolution, that is an entirely different theory. We know that it starts off with the fact that mankind has a common ancestor, and through his study, he thought that this evolvement, as he would say, has taken place through the descent of species from one into another. So his thesis was based on empirical evidence, as we know, in the 16th century or in the 17th, in fact, in the 18th century, I would say, when he traveled through this famous ship called Beagle. He stayed on the sea for about 4 or 5 years, and he took samples from various islands, and then he made this conclusion. So that route that he took was an entirely different one, and this is something that is an entirely different issue.
So what you mean is that the people referred in the Quran, they remain human beings in terms of their
You see,
physiology.
what is being said here is that their appearance started to resemble apes, and their inner nature also changed and got perverted. And just as apes and monkeys have a certain perverted nature, or the way they would go along in life, in their eating habits and their other instincts, so they started to resemble them in their instincts and in their appearance. So of course, when they would have died or they would have been consigned to the grave, they were still in that human form. That human form did not change, but their faces and their nature changed.
Right. Thank you.
So, Dr. Saleem, just a kind of ask on this question. So, the faces change. Like usually, when we say that a person who's good in nature, they have a softer face, they appear different, they move different. Is it the same context? It's not literal then. Literally, they didn't.
Oh,
Really
it is
literally become
literal.
monkeys.
So it is literal. You see, their appearance changed into apes. They started to look like apes, the way monkeys look, or the way apes look. So it was their physical appearance changed. It is not that it is like a metaphor or something that compares them to monkeys. This is not something that we can deduce from the words. The words, they say that kunu qiratan khasin, you become despicable monkeys. So that's like something actual physical change. It's not something that's symbolic.
Okay. I have a chat question. Dr. Saleem mentioned Shura in reference to fish raising their heads. Is that what the word means?
Shura. It's not shura. Shura.
Okay. So that's what the word means, they're asking?
Yes, shura. So shura is the plural of sharia, and sharia means a spear. If you look at a spear, it has this pointed heart type shape in the end, and then there's a rod. So the sharia is that spear type shape
Like
that you can see.
Is it like a spade?
It's like a spear, more of a spear.
Okay. Naushad Shafqat, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Sir, just on the question before this, Darwin's theory, I think, relates to the origins of man. And the apes that we are talking about is in the time of Moses, much after that. So I don't think Darwin would
not
be
relate.
referring to that.
Yes, absolutely right. That's another very important point. So that theory, it relates to pre-human samples, you can say.
That's right.
When human beings had not even been born. So this is much later.
Pre-Adam. In fact, pre-Adam.
It's pre-Adam. It's before the arrival of our forefather, who was Adam. So yes, thank you very much. Thank you for reminding us.
Dr. Saleem, I do not see any raised hands. We can move to the idiomatic translation and then maybe come back to it in the end.
Okay. So starting off with the literal and idiomatic translation, it says, Wa is qila lahum uskunu hazihi al-qarya. Wa and is when. Qila lahum, they were said. Uskunu. Uskunu means stay. Hazihi, in this. Qarya, in this city. So when it was said to them that you stay in this city, wa and kulu, eat, minha, from it, haisu, wherever, shi'tum, you want. Wa and kulu, you should say hittatun, brush our sins. Wa and udkhulu, enter, al-bab, the gate, sujjada, while bowing your heads. Naghfir lakum, we will forgive you. Khati'atikum, your sins. We will forgive you your sins. Sa, very soon. Nazid, we will increase. Al-muhsineen, for those who are thorough. So very soon we will give more reward to the thorough. So Nazid would be, we will increase it for the muhsineen. We will bless them further. Fa, but baddala, changed. Allazina, those who zalamu minhum, were unjust among them. Qawlan, the word, this word that they were said, the word of course is hitta. They change it, ghayr allazi, to what it was not. Qila lahum, that was said to them. So literally it would mean that when they changed the word that was said to them into that which it was not, what happened? Fa arsalna, fa, therefore, arsalna, we sent upon, alayhim, them, ridzam means punishment. Min, from, as-sama, the heavens. So we sent upon them punishment from the heavens. Bema, because, kanu, they were, yazlimun, they were oppressive, because they were unjust. Was'alhum, ask them. Was'al, ask whom, them. Was'alhum, ask them. Anil qarya, an, about, al-qarya, the city. Allati, that was, kanat, the city that, kanat is or was, haziratal bahr, hazira, on the shore, al bahr, sea. So ask them about the city that was on the seashore. Is, when, ya'duna would mean that they transgressed, fisabt, in the matter of Sabbath. When they transgressed in the matter of Sabbath, is when ta'tihim, came to them, hitanuhum, their fish, yawma sabtihim, on the day of Sabt, on the day of their Sabt, shur'an, with heads raised. Wa, and yawma, the day, la yaspitun, it was not Sabbath, and the day it was not Sabbath, la, not ta'tihim, they would come to them. So on other days they would not come to them. So the other days are the ones that were not Sabbath. Except for the Sabbath, they would not come to them. La ta'tihim. Kazalika, in this way. Nabluhum, we tested them. Bima, because kanu, they were, yafsikun, they were disobedient or they were insolent. So in this way we tested them because they were insolent. Wa, and, is, when, or recall, you can say, on and recall. Qalat, said, ummatun, a group, minhum, among them. Lima ta'izun, why do you advise qawman, a people, Allahu muhlikuhum, whom God has decided to destroy. Muhlikuhum, whom God has decided to destroy. Aw, or mu'azzibuhum, or God has decided to punish. Azaban shadida, in a severe way. Qalu, they replied, ma'aziratan, to present our excuse, ila rabbikum, to your Lord. So we are going to counsel these people in spite of the fact that God has decided to destroy them or to punish them, because we would like to do what we can best do. Of course, that is ma'azira, or present our excuse, ila rabbikum, to your Lord. Wa, and la'allahum, so that they yattaqun, become secure. So we are continuously even advising people about whom God has decided to destroy them or to punish them, so that at least we are able to fulfill our duty. We will present an excuse before God that we have done our due. That is what is implied. Fa, therefore, lamma, when, Nasu, they forgot. Ma zukkiru bihi, what they had been reminded of. Anjaina, we delivered. Allazina, those who. Yanhauna, who remained or abstained. Anissu, and from su, evil. So when they nasu ma zukkiru bihi would mean when they forgot that through which they were reminded of. What was that? What happened? Anjaina allazina yanhauna anissu. We protected those yanhauna who were stopping people anissu from evil. So we actually delivered those people who were stopping people from doing evil. Wa and akhazna, we took hold allazina of them zalamu, who were oppressive or who were unjust, bi'azabin, with a punishment, ba'is, that was extreme, bima, because kanu, they were yafsukun, disobedient. Because they had become disobedient, so we took hold of these people with a very, very severe punishment. Fa, therefore, lamma, when atau, they became rebellious, an, from, ma nuhu anhu, from that which they were stopped from. So, in other words, when they when with rebelliousness, they started to do from what they were stopped from, ma nuhu anhu. Qulna, we said, lahum, to them, kunu, become, qiradatan, monkeys, khasi'een, which are extremely despicable. Wa, and, is, when, ta'azzana, informed, or when your Lord informed them, Rabbuka, your Lord, layab'asanna, he will definitely send, alayhim, upon them, ila, until, yawmil qiyamah, the day of judgment. He is definitely going to send upon them, who, man yasumunahum, man who, yasumunahum, who will inflict upon them, su al azab, the worst of punishments. Inna, indeed, Rabbaka, your Lord, lasari'ul, swift, al-iqab, in retribution. Indeed, your Lord is swift in retribution. Wa, and innahu, inna, indeed, who he. Indeed he, Laghafur, is forgiving, Rahim, merciful. Indeed, he is one who is forgiving and merciful. Wa, and qatta'nahum. Qatta'nahum would mean we dispersed fil ard, in the land, umaman, their various groups. So we dispersed them in the land in the form of various groups. Minhum, min, from, whom, them, among them, as-salihun. Among them were people who were pious. Wa, and minhum, others, duna zalik, who were not like them, who were different. Wa, and balawnahum, we tested them, bil hasanat, with good situations, was-sayyi'at, and with dangerous situations. So we tested them with good and bad circumstances, or with good and dangerous circumstances. لَعَلَّهُمْ, so that they yarji'un, return. Of course, the implication is they return to God. Fa, therefore, khalafa, min ba'dihim, khalafa, left behind, min ba'dihim, after them, khalfun, such people, warisu, who became inheritors of the book, of course, or ya'khuzuna arada hazihi dunya, arada hazal adna. Ya'khuzuna would mean that who would take arada, the provisions, hazal adna, of this world, of this lowly world. Wa, and yaquluna, they would say, sayughfaru lana, in very soon we shall be forgiven. Wa, and in ya'tihim, if comes to them, or if came to them, aradun, a provision, mithluhu, like them, ya'khuzuhu, they will accept it. Alam, is it not? Yukhaz, they took hold, alayhim, from them, misaqul kitab, a covenant of the book. So what it actually means is that was not a covenant taken from them about this very book. Alam yukhaz alayhim, was not taken from them, misaqul kitab, a covenant about the book. And what was that? Allah, that, la, not. Yaqulu, they will say, Allahi, upon God, illa al-haq, except that was the truth. So they will not say anything about God but the truth. Wa, and darasu, fi ma fihi. Darasu, they read thoroughly Ma fihe, ma what, fihe what that was in it. So they read thoroughly what was in it. What darul akhirah, and wa and darul akhirah, the place of the hereafter. Khairun is better. Lillazina, for those yattaqun who are pious. So the place of the hereafter is better for those who are pious. Afala, do you not taqilun, understand? Wa and allazina, those who yumassikuna, get hold of, bil kitab, the book. So those who get hold of, or in fact what is meant here is who hold fast, who really stick, adhere to the book of God. Wa and akamu salat, akamu, they are diligent, as salat, in the prayer. Inna, indeed we, la, not, nudhi'u, we waste, ajra, reward, al muslihin, of the reformers. So what is said here is that those who hold steadfast or hold strongly to the book of God and who are diligent in the prayer, we do not waste the reward of the muslihin, of the reformers. Wa and is, remember, nataqna, when we lifted upon them, al jabal, the mountain, fawqahum, over them. Nataqna would mean that we made to hang or lifted. Al jabal, the mountain, fawqahum, fawqa means upon, whom, them. So when we lifted the mountain upon them, ka'annahu, as if it was, zulla, zulla means the canopy. Wa and zannu, they thought, annahu, that it is, waqi'um bihim, it's going to fall on them. So when we lifted the mountain in the form of a canopy, and they thought that it is going to waqi'um bihim, fall upon them. What did we say? Khuzu, take hold. Ma atainakum, ma, that, atainakum, we have given you, biquwwatin, with full force. So hold what we have given you with full force. Wazkuru, and remember, ma, that, fihi, in it, and remember what is in it. La'allakum, so that you, tattaqun, become pious. So khuzu ma atainakum would mean that take what is in it, biquwwa, with full force. Wazkuru ma fihi, and be reminded of what is in it. Remind yourselves and remember, in fact, what is in it, so that the result is tattaqun, that you become pious and you become secure. So yes, this is the idiomatic and literal translation. And once again, to remind you viewers that this idiomatic and literal translation is done so that you can follow the text more closely than by simply reading its translation. The word-to-word translation is done so that you are brought closer to the meanings of the text, so that you are able to reflect. And I have always said that if you can write down these words of vocabulary in a book, or maybe on your phones or whatever you have at hand, and keep revising them, then very soon you'll realize that you will be able to understand a large chunk of the Quran even without knowing Arabic, because these words, they keep on repeating, and when you keep reciting them and reading them and revising them, they give you a general expression or a general idea of the meanings. And please do try to do this for whatever time we are doing here. And also the best would be if you can revise later on, at least once or twice before we enter the next session. I can assure you that it's going to really help you in understanding the message, and it's going to really be a part of your memory as well. So yes, now we have more time for any more questions.
If anybody has any questions pertaining to the passage, please raise your hands. We have some valuable time left with Dr. Saleem here. It was a wonderful translation today. So if anybody has any questions, kindly raise your hands pertaining to the passage. If not, then we'll be moving to general questions. I do not see any raised hands, Dr. Saleem, as of now. If anybody has any general questions, you can ask those also. We have around about half an hour left. Still waiting on everyone.
So today we might be ending at 9:15 actually, because we have 15 minutes.
Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, please kindly raise your hands. I don't see any hands.
Yeah, I think I can ask this question if nobody is asking regarding the intercession question that I already raised with you. So please, I mean, elaborate on a bit. I mean, intercession, ये वसीले का जो concept है, or many people, maybe not that many people from Sunnis and other Muslim sects, they believe in it.
So you see, the word intercession, which is used in the Quran, on so many occasions, and this is something that you will be surprised to know that the word wasila, if you look at the Arabic, has been confused with the Urdu meaning of the word wasila. So wasila is not intersection. Actually, it means that you get hold of someone who's going to intercede on your behalf. That is what the general understanding is. So the Quranic verse is Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu ibtaghu ilayhil wasila. So ibtaghu ilayhil wasila, if it is translated the way people translate it, would mean that get hold of someone who is going to take you to God. Ibtaghu ilayhil wasila. That is how people translate it. But unfortunately for them, they have to note that the word wasila is not used as a means or someone who can act as an intercessor in Arabic. That's not the word wasila. That is the Urdu meaning of the word wasila. In Urdu, the word wasila is to get hold of some intermediary, someone who can become a means to do something. The word wasila in Arabic means nearness. So the verse actually means Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu taqullaha wabtaghu ilayhil wasila, or those who fear God, or those who believe, fear God, wabtaghu ilayhil wasila, and procure His nearness. Try to become closer to God. La'allahum tattaqun, so that you are forgiven, so that you remain secure. So the word wasila in the Arabic language does not refer to any intermediary. That is the Urdu meaning. The word wasila in the Arabic language literally means nearness. So what the verse is telling us is that try to come closer to God. Try to be a God conscious person. And for this, of course, it does not mention how, because that is something which the Quran continues to mention all around by of course becoming a good human being, by praying, by doing all the worship rituals in the right way. So that is what is mentioned by the word wasila.
Dr. Saleem, I have a question, chat question. Is there any relevance of Shab-e Barat?
Absolutely not, none. It's primarily a Shiite concept. The 15th of Shaban is the birth, as the Shiites say, of Imam Mahdi, and they celebrate this birth. For them, it's like a very huge day. It's something that really is, I would say, one of the premier religious gatherings for them, or religious festivities for them. And of course, there are a few very, very inauthentic narratives that are associated with this night of Shaban, and think that there's a narrative which says that on this day, if people remain awake and they ask for forgiveness, then God is going to forgive them in very large numbers. This is a very weak and inauthentic narrative, and it is on this basis that people think that the night of 15th of Shaban is a very blessed night. There is no such thing. It's not mentioned anywhere in the Quran. People think that in one of the surahs of the Quran, which says Inna anzalnahu fi laylatin mubarakah, they think that Laylatul Mubarakah is the night of Shaban, whereas it is the Laylatul Qadr that has been mentioned there. The night of Shaban is not mentioned anywhere in the Quran, and as I said, the only place where it is mentioned is in a weak hadith. And other than that, we know that from Shiite sources that it is actually the birthday of Imam Mahdi, which they think is said to arrive near the end of times, and he's going to bring prosperity and the rule of Islam, restore the rule of Islam. That again is something that I've discussed a number of times, that all narratives that depict the arrival of Mahdi near the end of time are totally baseless. They don't have any authenticity. There is just one narrative that holds such degree of authenticity, but that is something which the Prophet predicted near the end of his own era, like when the Sahaba were finishing off, and they were just going off. The last generation of the Sahaba was there, and if you look at the context of the narrative, we'll find that he was actually predicting that near the end of his own era, there will be a very just Khalifa who will be rightly guided, Al-Mahdi. And that Caliph, of course, if you look in history, was none other than Amir Muawiyah. So that is all that we can find from sources. Other sources which say that there is going to be a Mahdi near the end of time, and he is going to be a deliverer, he's going to be someone. None of the narratives. In fact, it is way before our own times, and Ibn Khaldun in his own Muqaddimah has said that there is not a single narrative that relates to Imam Mahdi that can be corroborated. So it is centuries ago that these narratives had already been discredited. But it seems that they have found mention in Sunni books by infiltrating from Shiite books, one, and two, as I said, regarding the night of Shaban, which is the 15th of Shaban. There is nothing that is found in Sunni books. Whatever we find is actually a Shiite reflection of in the Sunni books regarding the regarding the birth date of Imam Mahdi.
Dr. Saleem, Shab Barat is such a popular holiday in Pakistan, and it's a Sunni-based country mostly. So how do we explain
So
that?
you see, if you look at historical details, you'll find that Sunnis have been influenced by Shiites. For example, if you take 10th of Muharram, the way the Taziyah is taken out, all Sunnis, they regard it to be a very revered thing. If they are not even, if they don't participate, then that at least they deeply regard it to be a very, very devotional function. So Shiites have had a very strong influence on the Sunnis.
Okay, so the question about the return of Jesus, end of time, should I refer them to the question series by Dr.
Oh yes, because
that has been
because of the fact that this has been discussed a number of times in our discourses, both in our lectures and both in our books. You'll find that the second arrival of Jesus, very briefly I can explain it, that is basically a dream that was shown to the Prophet, and in that dream it seems that Christianity is going to recover, so to speak, of the loss of Sharia in it, which of course one of the things that is mentioned in the dream is that he's going to break the cross, he's going to kill the swine, referring to the fact that the Sharia that was revoked is going to be once again restored. Breaking the cross, of course, would mean that the concept of Trinity would be restored once again to monotheism. So basically, it is a dream of the Prophet in which it's not saying that Jesus is going to arrive. It's telling us that Christianity is going to go through a very huge reform, and that's like a news that was given to the Prophet, and that is all. It's not about physical appearance of Jesus. But this is a very brief overview. Otherwise, you can look up how Ustaz has made his case, and he has presented those narratives which clearly say that it was a dream. For example, if you look at the Muwatta of Imam Malik, you'll see that it is a dream of the Prophet in which he saw Jesus and Dajjal encircling the Kaaba, and then of course the rest of the story connects very well. But for that, you might need to, as I said, look at some of the publications that have been recently published regarding Hadith literature, and you'll find the details there.
So then I have a question. Is there no clear sign of the Day of Judgment? We just had a session on that recently, Dr. Saleem. If should they be directed to that?
I think, as I said, that is something that yes, of course, that can be referred to, but the only sure sign that has been mentioned in the Quran is the rise of Gog and Magog, which are the yellow races. The Chinese, the Mongols, of course, they are part of them, and the other nations that even dwell today in Australia and the US, they're all Gog and Magog. And Gog and Magog are the son of Javed, the third son of Noah, and they are said to rise near the end of time, and that is the only sure sign which is mentioned in the Quran. The rest, of course, they are other signs which are mentioned, and if you can refer them to that lecture in which we discussed the 10 signs and some of the, if you see that the signs are two types. One of them relate to the proximity of the Day of Judgment, which means that something that will happen near the Day of Judgment. And then there are other types of signs which are like something that will happen immediately before the Day of Judgment. So one type of signs deals with the proximity, that the Day of Judgment is near at hand. So there is a separate category of signs that relate to the proximity of the Day of Judgment. And then there is another set of signs that relate to the fact that they are going to appear right before the Day of Judgment. So there's one that is a proximal attachment to the Day of Judgment, and the other is right before the arrival of the Day of Judgment.
Okay. Then I have another chat question, Dr. Saleem. Does Aqamat Salah implies praying in congregation?
No. Aqamat Salah means to be diligent in the prayer, to show your diligence, and that encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses being punctual, it encompasses offering the prayer on time, it encompasses offering the prayer with your heart into it, with your attention into it. Congregation is not implied. So the word aqama in the Arabic language means to adhere fully to some concept, to fully adhere, to become diligent and vigilant.
Right. Then Rashad Shafqat, please ask your question.
Dr. Saab, just wanted to ask that the Quran is referred to as the Kitab right from the beginning. In the initial stages, it wasn't in the form of a book. So why and how is it referred to as kitab right from the word
Yes.
go?
So you see, the concept of a book, the way we know it today, means something that is in the form of a book, which means that it has to be between two covers. This is a modern interpretation of the word book. Ancient, connotations mean that anything that is compiled, whether the repository or the medium of that compilation is in the memory, whether it is outside of the memory, whether it's in a, let's say, in a soft copy. So you see, today, soft copies, although they are not hard copies, we still call soft copies as book. So in ancient times, books that were not written down but they were committed to memory were also called books. So it's just a question of understanding that as times have changed, anything which is arranged in a sequence, not necessarily compiled in written form, was called a book. So that could have been something that has written down. It could have been something that was in our memories. And today, as I said, if we call a book that is in a soft format, we would immediately understand that yes, soft copy is also a form of a book. So you see, the connotation of the word changes. So it is not something that governs the meaning of the book. So it could be the repository is your brain, your mind. The repository could be a piece of paper. The repository could be a branch of a tree. The repository could be a computer disk. So that's something which is additional to it. The word book is means that something that is authored by some person and arranged in the form of a discourse.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I have a quick chat question. Well, I don't know if it's quick, but it's a question. If I can recall, last time Dr. Saab mentioned one verse from the Old Testament book of Deuteronomy about a prophecy about the coming of a messenger. A Christian friend once mentioned that it was about the Jesus Christ, not about our Prophet Muhammad. Kindly clarify how that prophecy fits to Prophet Muhammad and not Jesus Christ.
I think we have done that a number of times. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter number 18. If you look through that chapter, and you can see the relevant lectures, you'll see the way that prophecy has mentioned that I will raise a prophet from among your brethren, which means that the prophet will be from the cousins. So Jesus was a direct descendant of Moses. So he was the last Israelite prophet. So he could not have been meant, because the words are that I am going to raise a prophet from among your brethren. So someone that is your descendant cannot be a brother. Only a parallel branch, that was the branch of the Ishmaelites, could have been referred to here. And the only prophet to come amongst the Ishmaelites after Prophet Ishmael was Prophet Muhammad. So, I mean, it is so clear that you just cannot distort the word cousin to make it mean someone who is your descendant.
Okay, now Shahzad Saab, I see that you have your hand raised. Was that the last question? Because otherwise I'll end the session. It's weird.
Just a small question, sir. Sir, just before namaz in congregation, the aqamat is said, kat qamat salat, kat qamat salah.
Correct.
Do we need to say that when praying individually?
No, we don't. This is just for congregation.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Saab, I have one more raised hand. Can I ask the question for them?
Yes, please go ahead.
Ijaz Hussain Saab, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Since Basant is coming in Lahore, the ban is lifted after I think 20 years. So some say it is a Hindu ritual which was observed historically by Muslims in Lahore. But anyway, what are the moral guidelines regarding Basant to be observed?
I think this is again something that is very commonly known, that any festivity, any function that does not involve any immorality, that does not involve any extravagance or show off, anything that is done in certain limits, if it does not involve all these things, cannot be objected to. So the fact is that if it is not extravagant, if it is not a waste of money, if it's not something that causes injury or harm to people potentially, I mean, you cannot object to it. So that is a principle that we can apply to any festivity. Anything that becomes a life-threatening situation, or anything that becomes a source of extravagance, anything that becomes a thing that may cause harm to people, should be abstained from.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Inshallah, we'll reconvene next weekend for our regular sessions. And with the office, I'll be ending the session now. Thank you, Dr. Saleem.